Welcome to another episode of The Locker Room. I am Captain Paul. This is my co-host, Fajardo. How are you doing there, Fajardo?
I am living another day, so I can't complain, right?
Nah, man. So, looking to talk about a lot of hockey news. Been a very busy offseason. This episode, we're going to specifically break down the Pacific Division. If you are following this podcast thus far, talked about a lot of the hockey moves in the offseason, but we're going to break down each division, who we feel like is going to be, how each team's outlook for the season is going to be going. So, anything to add there, Fajardo?
No, man, I just want to get to it. It's looking good.
Well, let me turn this down a bit. So let's go right into the first team here in the Pacific Division, the Anaheim Ducks, or in my heart, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. We have an interesting offseason for Anaheim. Thus far, what has been the most surprising part of this for you, Fajardo?
How they were able to string some of these like core players that were crucial to their teams. You know, they weren't necessarily the top guys, but they played important roles on their teams. You know, some guys like Ryan Strome, Frank Bertano, John Klingberg. You know, these are guys that have some pretty good, a pretty good background coming into this season. Obviously, guys like Strome and Bertano, they went deep into the postseason with the Rangers or whatnot. So those two guys have some chemistry. And I think that they're going to help some of these younger players like a McDavid, who's still developing at center. Who else? Like a Lundstrom, who's also still developing. I mean, he's 22, but I'm pretty sure that someone like Strome can teach him something new, and maybe bring some tips that they may have learned from the team that that they went deep into the playoff with. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting, honestly.
Well, and I think the most interesting part for me is that this offseason was the John Gibson rumors, right? You have a cornerstone of that franchise, essentially people saying that he's going to be moved on, like he's tired of losing in Anaheim. So I wasn't really expecting Anaheim to make as many moves as they did. And I think some of it is to actually be competitive this season. I'm not saying they're going to win a cup, but I think they're going to be far more competitive. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a more interesting team to watch night in, night out. It seems like with the Anaheim Ducks, they have really kind of lost that way with when the prime era of Getzlaf and Perry. I mean, where they were very competitive, fighting for deep playoff runs, going for cups. It's just kind of nice to see them at least try to be competitive. I think John Gibson had a part to play in that. I think they realized, we have this goalie who's 29 years old who wants to win, doesn't want to be putting on rebuilding rosters or rosters that aren't winning. So I think that definitely kind of contributed to the fact that they really bought in this season. The most surprising part outside of that, though, is John Klingberg taking a 1-year deal, right?
Yep.
Going over there to Anaheim for $7 million. He's a good point producer from the point. 74 games played, 6 goals, 41 assists, and 47 points. On this breakdown, has him paired with Cam Fowler, a very good point producer himself. But I think the most interesting part about that is it's 1 year. I am kind of surprised Klingberg, who at 29 was probably looking to cash in, and surprised he only took a 1-year deal. Now, do you think that's more indicative that he believes in himself, the buy-in that he can make more next year? Or do you think this is more indicative that, like, some of the best offers were from teams that aren't in best spots? He doesn't want to keep himself locked down into a rebuilding situation. What do you think?
I definitely think that the offers that he probably got were definitely from teams that are going to be doing a long rebuild, whereas, obviously he's 29, right? And playing defense is not an easy thing. Not everybody's made to go till 36 or 40, Zdeno, all right? But I think that he's like, all right, this is a team that got some really good players into their locker room, whatnot, and they have a chance to actually be good if everything can click. And then you do have a stud in net, right, who does want to win. So they didn't get rid of him. They didn't get rid of Gibson. So the team obviously believes in trying to get a team that can win now. And I think that may have finalized Klingberg's decision on picking Anaheim. Whereas, if he would have gone to a team like the Blackhawks, he knows he's going to be at the tail end of his career when maybe they're making a move. But signing a 1-year contract allows him to really take a look and say, all right, you know what? They have some good pieces. Worst case scenario for him, if the team isn't good or good enough or actually do anything, he could actually go somewhere else. But he's in a situation where he can still put up some really good numbers with the forward that they brought in. So for him, I think it's one of those that really solidifies. It's going to be able to solidify him as a player. And if he really wants to go for that cash, most likely he can get some more money if he has a good season next year. On the same token, maybe the team is really good and they'll just do an extension if he believes in everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's indicative of him wanting a year of wait and see with this franchise. I mean, let's just kind of get right into the line breakdowns. This isn't probably going to be exactly how they're the 1 through 4, but I think it gives a good indication, right? So you have on the first line, you have Trevor Zegras, who had a phenomenal year, 61 points, 75 games played, 23 goals, 38 assists, with Adam Henrique. He had a good season, 58 games played, 19 goals, 23 assists, 42 points. But then with Troy Terry, 75 games, 37 goals, 30 assists for 67 points, and very good season for him. I mean, I think for that top line, outside of obviously Henrique, it's a pretty young top pair right there with Zegras and Terry.
Yep.
So I kind of like the youth there. And then they kind of brought in, you have some guys here like Ryan Strome, Frank Vetrano, Maxime Comitois. Probably butchering that name. I mean, Maxime, I'll just say it that way, 52 games played, 6 goals, 10 assists, 16 points. Okay. But then you have Strome, 74 games played, 21 goals, 33 assists, 54 points.
And leadership. And leadership.
And leadership. $5 million for that is maybe a tiny bit rich, but he looks like a guy that I think is a little bit older in his career at this point, but I think he's kind of found a nice niche in the NHL. And another guy finding his niche, I think, would be Frank Vetrano. 71 games played, 18 goals, 14 assists for 32 points, which doesn't really pop out at you, but when he went to the Rangers, you saw an increase in productivity.
Yeah, most of those points that he has there, I believe, started accumulating when he got to the Rangers. He made an instant impact. He's definitely got what any person who plays EA NHL will understand that he's got a heat seeker, and he has a clap bomb. But that heat seeker that he can rip a wrister from almost a point and score, that's huge. Because now, a lot of teams like to break in and, get lower, probably below the hash marks and really start their offense. He can actually help you start the offense as soon as you cross that blue line. You know what I mean? So that for me was something that I really liked about his game when he did get traded to the Rangers, because he wasn't being utilized properly in Florida. The direction that they took, because when they first had him, he was doing well, and then the way that his career ended there, it looked like he wasn't doing much. He was just a misfit. But I think the game that he had really translated well when he got on the Rangers, and I'm really curious to see how it's going to translate over to the Ducks. But I think with the addition of Strome and him, I think that now you have two guys that know what they can do in very crucial moments, and that's only going to propel that line a little bit higher.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think with chemistry is a big thing. Chemistry kind of allows the comfortability. Vetrano, as someone who's a Bruins fan, watched him even play in Providence. He's always had a world-class shot. The rest of his game's kind of been always average to maybe a little bit above average and below average defensively. But he's been a guy that's always had that shot. And I think it looked like he was starting to finally figure that out with the Rangers. And I think that chemistry with Strome will be kind of key. Because at the Panthers, he didn't really do that well. But then when he went to the Rangers, it was like breath of fresh air into his system and was allowed to really thrive. But kind of moving in here to the line 3, you have, as of right now on this, depth chart, Mason McTavish, Max Jones, and Jacob Silverberg. The one standout, obviously, Silverberg, 53 games played, 5 goals, 16 assists, 21 points. You got a couple guys, obviously, looks like injured here. 5 weeks. So I don't know how updated that is, but a little dinged up. So that will be an interesting kind of mix. And then the fourth line, you have Derek Grant on left wing, 15 goals, 14 assists, 29 points, 71 games. Isaac Lundstrom, 80 games played, 16 goals, 13 assists for 29 points. And then Sam Carrick, 64 games played, 11 goals, 8 assists for 19 points. That's a pretty productive fourth line if that's the way it shakes out. You're not looking for 40-point scores from your fourth line usually. But where I kind of like this team the most is the defense. Mm-hmm. I think you have Cam Fowler and John Klingberg, who are both point producers, over 40 points last season from the point. I think we can both say, pretty solid point producers and pretty good defensemen as well. You got Urho Vakanainen. I was a Vakanainen fan when he played for the Pete Bruins. I thought he struggled to find his game in the Boston Bruins system. It looked like he was finally starting to turn a corner, and then I think he got dinged up a bit. He's still young. He's only 23 years old. But I think there's some upside there with Vakanainen, and I actually like his game. He plays he's usually pretty good with his defensive stick. 6 points, he's not going to, break down the doors, but I think there's a little bit more there. I could see him giving you 15, 20 points a season. Then paired with Kevin Shattenkirk, who, had a nice revitalization of his career. 82 games played, 8 goals, 27 assists, 35 points. That's solid point production from your, 3/4 defenseman. Mm-hmm. And then to round it up the back end, you have Simeon Benoit. 1 goal, 4 assists, and 53 games played for 5 points. And then you have Jamie Drysdale. Now, he is looked at as a very, very good prospect, only 20 years old. 81 games played last season, 4 goals, 28 assists for 32 points. I think the big thing here is that these young defensemen like Vakanainen and Benoit and then Drysdale, they have to develop. If they take that next step in that development, you could be looking at kind of like a vintage Ducks team where it's very hard defense and they'll make it very hard to score on you.
Yep.
Any kind of thoughts on their defense and what your thoughts are?
Well, if you notice the way that Cap Friendly has the defensive pairs, right? They took guys that are really strong defensively overall with similar stats and put them together, right? With some of these guys like Klingberg, right? A -28. That means a lot of goals went by him and his line when he was on the ice. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, they're all his fault. But, hey, you pair him with a guy like Cam Fowler who looks to have a similar game, at least points-wise. Overall, they can help each other out, where you have one guy who's a little more defensive and the other guy who might be a little more offensive. Same thing with Benoit and Drysdale, right? Drysdale, -26. That is not indicative of a good player nor a bad player, right? You got to think about it like this: he may just be a very offensive player, right? Yeah. And that might be one of those things. He's also young, right? He may have missed a few things, and it's part of the growing process. Now you put him on here with someone who's not that much older than him, just like 3 years older than him, who has a more stable number of just -5 as far as the plus-minus is concerned, right? That doesn't put up a lot of points, but at least he's solid defensively, because just being a -5 with 51 games, that's not bad.
No, it's not bad at all. And I think for a guy like John Klingberg, if you look at the -28, some people have knocked his defensive game at times, but I think being in Dallas didn't really help. And the reason why I give a guy like Drysdale a little bit of room, he's only 20, right? Mm-hmm. And defense is one of the hardest positions to transition to next to goalie. Forwards generally can be plug and play. It might take a season or two. But with defensemen, it's usually early 20s, 22 to maybe 24, 25 when they get it. And with goaltenders, 25, 26, 27 is usually when they finally start kind of breaking through. And I think with Drysdale, he's a smaller defenseman, 5'11", 175 pounds. He has the offensive upside. If he learns to play really well in his own end, he could be a threat. Mm-hmm. He could be a really good development. Now, I don't think that the year of him, I'm not saying he'll be an elite defenseman this year, but I do think he has the potential in a few years to really kind of possibly be a top pairing type guy if he takes the correct steps in his development. And that comes up to the Ducks and really kind of fostering that around him. What do you think of the goalie situation here? I mean, you have a guy like John Gibson who is rumored to be traded now. He denied him. He denied all those rumors, but it was out there. And then you have Anthony Stolarz. I think Gibson's a very good number one goalie. I think he's been kind of hung out to dry on a lot of rebuilding teams, and I don't think people properly appreciate how good he is. And I think Anthony Stolarz, like if you look at his numbers last season, 28 games played, a .917 save percentage, a 2.67 goals against. Like he looks pretty solid, and especially him being 6'6", that also helps.
Yeah, there's no room in the net. You might as well grab that old with that commercial with the big seal in the net, and that's what you have when you look at Stolarz in net. he's just there. He doesn't have to move much. He's
a big boy.
Yeah, definitely a big guy. I mean, as far as that tandem, obviously 28 games as a second tendy, great numbers. Obviously, if you look at the numbers here on the screen, right, his numbers look better than Gibson, but let's face it, Anaheim wasn't really a competitive team last season, and that's why there was a lot of those rumors about Gibson not being happy and wanting out. I think that with the moves that they made, bringing in some of this veteran leadership, just team leadership, right? You actually improve your chances and you give it a shot, right? And for Gibson, I mean, I think he's got to be happy with the turnaround from last season to what they have currently, and really take a look and say, you know what? It's not the best team, but it's a team that can give you a chance if everything goes well. So it's just one of those. And, if you go back to the forwards, that third and fourth line, honestly, they both look like third lines, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you have one line that has two kids being led with Silverberg, let's just face it, that guy, he can put up numbers when he's healthy. When he's healthy and he has the right line mates, the guy can put up numbers. He's a good goal scorer, especially when you're looking at the third line. So I think that line has a lot of potential. I think that considering you have a young center, it's going to be one of those where they're going to have to. Well,
it's going to be a growing progress. It's going to be a growing progress this season. I think that's a big thing. Like they're going to have to, if that's going to be indeed their third line going into, which I don't think it will be. I think they'll probably have maybe bump Jones down to the third line, right? Maybe put Grant up there for the beginning of the season. I could be wrong, but I think you get a little bit more experience that way. Kind of hide them at first, let these forwards develop. But it's gonna come down to them evolving. I think Anaheim's top two lines this season are far more competitive.
Definitely, I definitely think it's going to be more competitive.
So, kind of wrapping this up, I wanted to kind of show, right, where they finished last season in these standings. And as you see right here, kind of scrolling down, in the Pacific Division, you have Calgary in first, Edmonton second, Los Angeles third, Vegas fourth, Vancouver fifth, San Jose sixth, Anaheim seventh, and Seattle rounding out the sad sack of the eighth spot. Where do you think Anaheim can realistically finish next season?
I honestly think they can be maybe a 5, maybe a 4. I think that they've solidified themselves to at least be on that bottom rim of the playoffs, and if teams aren't careful, they can creep up in the standings. So I would say like they're number 5 team caliber in this division. I think that if teams don't pay attention as much as they should to this team, and some of the hidden offensive power that they do have in the first two lines, they can actually creep up to 4th. But I don't see them being any higher than that.
Yeah, I would have to say, I say that's a fair evaluation. I think, I think from the 4 to the 6 slot is where they'll come in and be like, oh, that's a big jump. Kind of depends. You have the youth movement there. I think they're better than last season, right? I don't think they'll finish 7th in the division. I think that at the very least they'll finish 6th. But if everything kind of hits well, Strome and Vetrano keep taking that step forward together with that chemistry, you could be looking at a fringe playoff team. Definitely kind of has to. We're going to have to see how it pans out, but that's kind of my thoughts on them. Before we get into the next team in the Pacific Division, anything else to close out before we move on from the Ducks?
No, I would just say keep an eye on them. Like I said, they're a sneaky team. The way that they're set up, there's nothing that's going to blow you away right out of the gate. But I think that they're going to have really hard work ethics, and they're really going to just work hard and probably sneak a couple of games, steal a couple of games throughout the season that may put them in a better place when it comes to playoff time.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of promise there, and I think it's going to be kind of something to I mean, if I'm an Anaheim Ducks fan, I'm definitely a little bit more enthusiastic for the future.
Yeah.
So, going into the next team here in the Pacific Division, and this is a sad division, but I mean, I shouldn't say that. They got some top end talent. So we're gonna go from like one of the worst teams in that division to one of the best here in Calgary. So with Calgary, there was a big extension the other day. His man was Jonathan Huberdeau. What did you think of it?
I think Huberdeau signing that extension means that they sold him on their idea for the long run, right? The team has already been exciting. Obviously, with the loss of Gaudreau, everybody was kind of questioning where the team is going to go, and I think with the addition of Huberdeau, it's one of those where, okay, we brought in a similar type of player that can score, that can do stuff, whatnot. Now he's here for the long run. Now it kind of gives everybody that, okay, we don't have to worry about him leaving or wanting to leave or anything like that. It really gives, not only does it solidify what their plans are for the next couple of years, but it also boosts the team morale, that he believes in the team so much that he's willing to sign a long contract. And it's not even that much for a player that just put up 100+ points last season. He is only getting paid $5.9 million, right? And that's not a lot. That's not, and he could be the face of this team. He's not like, they're not doing the Toronto thing where they're going to pay 3 players over $10 million.
And never win. The thing here is, I'll read the article a little bit here. The Calgary Flames have locked in their top offensive player for the foreseeable future. In the dwindling hours of Thursday evening, the Flames put out the finishing touches on the club's most important piece of the business in years, reportedly agreeing to terms with forward Jonathan Huberdeau on a massive 8-year contract extension worth an annual average of $10.5 million. The details of the deal, which now ties Huberdeau to Calgary through 2029 through 2030 season, has such that salary structure and the inclusion of any trade production have yet to be reported. So, long story short, you had a phenomenal season with 115 points last season, 85 assists, 30 goals, right? 10.5 per year. Hey, that's a lot for a guy that's literally 29, and that at the end of the deal will be, 37 years old?
Yeah.
But I think the last 2 years of that contract they'll probably regret. But I think for the future, you're going to have him for his prime years. I think Huberdeau is a player who's a playmaker. So I think he'll have a longer shelf life, if that makes sense. I don't think he's been one of these guys that flames out. I think he's been one of these guys that kind of really ages gracefully. And I could be incorrect, but I mean, if you look at a guy like Huberdeau, it just seems like he's a consistent point producer. I mean, looking at his stats here last year, 115 points. That is definitely the biggest outlier out of all of them. But the season before, 61 points in 55 games. That's over a point per game. 78 points in 69 games played, right? It seems like in the season before that, 92 points in 82 games. He's over a point per game player within the last 4 seasons. And obviously that's an upward trend. And if he can stay healthy, I think that's a good deal for them. But it is hard to lock these guys up for these long terms, and usually towards the back end of the deal, you're going to be regretting it. So what are your thoughts on Jonathan Huberdeau? Do you think this is a smart deal?
Well, obviously,
bad deal?
I honestly think it's a very good deal. Again, it takes away from losing someone like Johnny Gaudreau, because you bring in a guy who's producing the same way at the moment, right? And you hope that you don't miss a stride, right? That's the idea. You hope that, okay, cool, so that's still there. Because the team was a good team all last season. Obviously, they flopped in the playoffs. They got shut out. How I forgot how badly they lost, but they lost.
Pretty bad. Yeah, they
right?
lost.
They completely just got blanked. And now you bring in someone else, same caliber, maybe a little bit of a different style. And then you keep on building. You bring in some players that can help solidify some of the other lines. You look at like their fourth line according to this, right? And they bring in like a Kevin Rooney, as a free agent who for the Rangers played like a utility Swiss knife, right? He kind of just played left wing, right wing, center, but he was always a very good defensive player, always very good on the penalty kill. So you can count on him to always show up, grind it out, play defensively, be one of the top penalty killers on your team. So that way your stars can get a little bit more rest and, obviously be more effective on a 5-5. And then, pair him with Lucic. That's a grinding out line, right?
Yeah, that's a line that's going to be kind of thumping some bodies. Like that, it's going to be doing real. And I think, I think the Elias Lindholm, Tyler Toffoli with Jonathan Huberdeau should be a pretty electric line. Mm-hmm. They're going to put up some points. I think Toffoli, you can get a little bit more out of him. Mm-hmm. Just because I think the pedigree's there and he's only 30 years old. But kind of before we go into the breakdown of the team, I'll say I like the Huberdeau deal just because I feel bad for some Canadian teams because they keep losing players because they don't want to be stuck in a Canadian market where they're losing. Mm-hmm. And I think Calgary isn't that far away from being a contender. Mm-hmm. But I think overall it was a good deal for Huberdeau to kind of get locked up so that Flame fans have something to be excited for.
Yeah.
Because you lose Goudreau, you lose Tkachuk, and it's like, are we going to keep anyone? And finally you're seeing some guy commit to the Calgary Flames.
Yeah.
So let's go into the breakdown of the Calgary team.
Yep.
Kind of want to do a segue into that is you look at these top two lines, relatively competent. Like I said, you have Jonathan Huberdeau, you have Elias Lindholm, you have Tyler Toffoli. Very good point producers around the same age. 115 points, for Huberdeau, 82 for Lindholm, and 49 for Toffoli. But I think on that top line with Toffoli, if he plays with those two, you're going to see an increase in production. I think he's more of like a complementary piece. So like the sum of the parts around him is going to help him with his production. What do you think?
I honestly think that Huberdeau is going to be the Panarin of this line. He's going to make those other two guys better. He had 85 assists last season. He likes to share the puck. Not necessarily finish, so he's not selfish, which means that you're going to have better vision, you're going to have more playmaking, right, and more opportunities. It's going to increase Lindholm's numbers and Toffoli's numbers, in my opinion. Based off of what he does, he's going to help that line improve offensively, not by being the guy who scores all the goals, but the guy that knows how to create the play. And that's going to be a difference, whereas Goudreau, I feel like they needed him to carry the offensive load by being the guy that scores all the goals. So there was a lot of pressure on Goudreau, right? And I feel like this is a similar but polar opposites as far as like their play style.
Right.
So I think that it's only going to make the other guys more offensive. I mean, you look back at like a Ryan Strome with Panarin. Panarin is not the guy that's going to finish. He could finish. He's probably one of the better finishers in the league, right? But he rarely uses that ability. He uses that threat to open up lanes and play make and open up other opportunities for other guys and make them better. Strome, who was not known as an offensive player or powerhouse by any means, had his best season as a NHLer by playing with him and being afforded those opportunities and just having his stick on the ice and scoring. These guys can obviously do that. Now you add someone who's like that in Huberdeau, and you have two guys that can definitely finish and create and so on and so forth. You have a really deadly line. Their top line is going to be really scary, honestly. for any defense.
So like I think like frankly their top line is going to be one of the better ones in the NHL. But I think their second line is going to be okay. You're going to have Michael Backlund centering Andrew Magapane. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
And then Blake Coleman. I mean, like, Magapane had in 82 games played, 35 goals, really good goal scoring, 20 assists, 55 points. Backlund, 82 games played, 12 goals, 27 assists, 39 points. And then you have Coleman, 81 games played, 16 goals, 17 assists for 33 points. It's going to be interesting to see. Like, the second line is going to make or break this team, in my opinion. Because, like, if they don't produce, like, it's going to be one of those teams that's just a one-line team. I think you need more from Coleman. You need more from Backlund. Like, you need them to kind of, be good secondary scoring.
I honestly don't think the second line is going to be shaped up this way. Obviously when they brought in Coleman, he had just come from Tampa. He brings that championship pedigree, whatnot, but it didn't translate over so well with these guys. If I think maybe mix it up a little bit, maybe move one or two pieces between them and the third line. I think then they might have a little bit more of a balance. Because from the numbers here, everybody's going to know they're always going to be looking for Magapane. He's their finisher. He's the one that scores all the goals on that line.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to look at that and say, okay, cool. Maybe add someone who's a little bit more mid-range, but as you can see by their other lines, there's not really too many options, right?
Because like for example, then I know he's a center, but like Monahan's out for the season, right? So I don't know what the deal with Monahan is as of right now here on Cat Friendly. He's injured. We have to follow up on that, but I mean, I think the problem I see with this team is like besides Magapane, where's the secondary scoring going to come from? I mean, I think you maybe could switch out Dubé and Coleman. I think Coleman's probably more of a third liner.
Yeah.
Maybe you get a little bit more out of Dubé with an increased time on ice because he only had 12 minutes. 12 minutes, 50 seconds last year average.
Yeah.
Maybe you give him a few more minutes. Maybe he gets 40 points. Maybe that's something you just need on your second line. There's options there. I will say their fourth line is definitely a grinder line with Milan Lucic, Kevin Rooney, and Trevor Lewis.
That's going to be the fun line to watch, honestly.
It's gonna be a bunch of hitting and a bunch of fucking finishing checks. And as someone that is a Bruins fan that watched Lucic in his quote unquote prime, he's a fun player to watch, especially when he gets in the mix. But he's not obviously worth that cap hit he is now. But that's going to be coming off the books next year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think up front, when you lose caliber players like Kachuk and Goudreau, you're going to take a little bit of a hit because, you lost Goudreau for nothing. You got Kachuk, you got a couple pieces back. But it is going to be interesting to see how the Goudreau leaving, how much that's going to affect this offense because I think you are missing that piece up front. If I'm Calgary, I'm trying to get like maybe a good second liner just to kind of round off the offense.
Well, I mean, so in situations like this, it can be a negative, it can be a positive, right? It all depends on how your minor system works, right? Because if you have a minor system that can mirror what your NHL team is doing, it makes it easier for the players to transition from the minors to the upper leagues and kind of just fit in, right? So obviously they have a couple of pieces down there, and that they drafted. They still have they have about four forwards that they drafted that are in their early 20s. You have a center.
They have a lot of prospects. They have a lot of prospects. You have Ronnie Tape Cole. You have
Barry. So it may open the door for one of these guys, and if one of these guys can step in and just be at least maybe an average player, that's a great step because it starts solidifying the team in the long run with some of this young talent. That's the whole purpose of drafting. You want to get guys that when other guys start fading out can come in and fill in these roles. And you have some good prospects here and some guys that might be able to just fill in that role. I mean, they definitely have like 5 centers in their minor league system.
3, 4, 5, 6.
So they have five good centers that can probably step in and do hopefully do something. But again, this is all contingent on how their relationship between their NHL team and their AHL team works, and see how easy it is to translate up. See who has a potential to maybe take that step. Especially if if Monahan is injured for the season, right? Then you're losing a quality center, and you're gonna have to hope that one of these guys can come in and at least hold down the fort, right?
Yeah.
Not be an elite player, just hold down the fort and be okay, and maybe even grow. Who knows? Maybe we'll see a new superstar coming in. Maybe we're gonna have to learn one of these guys' name in the long run, right? But we won't know.
And the thing is, Calgary fans, if you're watching this, because we don't follow the organization that closely, so we're gonna research and stuff like that. But if there's some prospects you're fond of, let us know down below in the comment section, because that would be interesting, and we'll look into it and kind of their prospect profile. It's unfortunate with Sean Monahan, because that was a lot of potential, but he's had a couple of down years now, continually injured, always a hip issue. I believe it was a hip issue, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, injury hip. I think he actually might be done at this point, because he's got some continuous hip injuries. So, offensively, I think Calgary will be a one-line team as of right now, and I think they're gonna have to depend on the second and third line. Hopefully, they take the step up and start producing.
Yeah.
Now the defense, right? You got Noah Hannafin, Rasmus Anderson, Mackenzie Weegar, who they got in that Florida deal.
Yep.
Nikita Zadorov. You got Oliver Killington and Nicholas Milosh. I mean, if you look at Hannafin, 81 games played, 10 goals, 38 points, 48 points, solid. Rasmus Anderson, 4 goals, 46 assists, 50 points, really good. Mackenzie Weegar, 80 games played, 8 goals, 36 assists, 44 points, really good. Nikita Zadorov, 74 games played, 4 goals, 18 assists for 22 points, that's pretty solid. And then you got Oliver Kylington, 73 games played, 9 goals, 22 assists for 31 points. And then Nicholas Milosh, 50 games played, 2 goals, 5 assists for 7 points. That's not terrible for a third pairing guy. I mean, I kind of like some of the point production, especially from Hannafin, Anderson, and Weegar. So I think maybe the secondary scoring comes more from transition from the point. You know what I mean? Maybe that's a possibility. I think Nikita Zadorov, to me, he's a solid defenseman, but I would prefer him for a Stanley Cup contender. I prefer him on a bottom 2 pair. I don't know if he's top 4 on a Stanley Cup winning team, but he's a big physical body, 6'6", pretty solid defenseman. I just think number 4 would be a little bit high for me. What do you think of their D pairs?
As far as the D pairs, obviously these aren't set by the teams. It's set by Cap Friendly, and
Right.
I kind of like what Cap Friendly does here. Right, you look at the top pair, pretty equal as far as like points go, plus minus goes, and then the next two defensive pairings, it looks like Cap Friendly has them set up in a way where you have one guy who's very offensive, puts up the higher numbers, and has a higher plus minus total, and then the next guy has a less plus minus totals, the points are less or whatnot, but you can tell that they're more of a defensive player in the way that this is set up. Now,
Right.
You take a look at this, right, and you got to be happy either way, because out of all the defensemen, there's only one guy who has negative anything. All the other guys are plus in their last season, which means that they were obviously there for a lot more goals than they let up. So that's always a good sign that they complement the lines and assist the lines. And in today's NHL, you got to have at least one defenseman that can play 4 forward, right? We all know what that means. He's going to join the rush. He's going to be an offensive threat, even though he's a defenseman, right? And then you need a guy who's going to be able to sit back a little bit and back him up from the blue line. Whether it's to help slow down the opposition on a counterattack until he can get back. But that makes or breaks a lot of teams, is how that the defense gets involved in the offense, but still doesn't give up too many defensive, doesn't give up too much of an offense to the other team, doesn't allow the other team to break out and stuff like that. And according to their numbers, their plus minus rating, these guys are set up to have a pretty strong season and Milosh is definitely going to improve his plus-minus rating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And also, you take a look at the guys back there. Nobody's under 6 foot, so you have a big defensive.
Yeah, you have a big decor. Like
exactly.
you're gonna have a team that kind of wears on you, and maybe it's just gonna be kind of a team that's very hard to score against.
Yep.
I mean that's what you need though.
Exactly. I mean, you look at all those guys. One guy is under 200 pounds. All the other guys are 200 or better. They're gonna be some big boys. They're gonna do some really heavy checking, in my opinion, right? And if they're moving the puck and they get involved in the offense, they're gonna be hard guys to get off the puck. All right, so I see the defense probably contributing to the secondary scoring this season, probably a little bit more than before, because I think that they're going to play a crucial role in how their offense works.
So another crucial role here, goaltending.
Yes.
Jacob Markstrom had a phenomenal season last year.
Yes,
63 games played, 922 save percentage, 2.22 goals against, 37 wins, 15 losses. Then you had Danielle Ledard from the Providence Bruins. Stole my heart, Vadar. 23 games played, 906 save percentage, 2.75. Not bad for a backup, right? Both goalies over 6'5". Kind of funny. Markstrom absolutely shit the bed in the playoffs, though.
Yeah, he did.
He had a awful playoff. And I think it kind of comes down to he has to take that next step in the postseason. I'm not saying the team played amazing in front of him and he let him down. Like, there was some definitely defensive lapses. And maybe getting a guy like Uyghur and getting a guy like Huberdeau is an improvement over having just one guy like Tkachuk. Maybe improving your decor will help this, but Markstrom hasn't shown me enough in the postseason. I mean, he's done a marvelous job from becoming that Florida Panthers goalie when they, it was the Florida Panthers that got him, drafted him. He was supposed to be the next big guy, never really panned out, goes to Vancouver, struggles for a bit, has that season in Vancouver where he did really solid, then he got kind of dinged up. He gets over to Calgary, keeps up with that momentum, has a fantastic season, but one of the biggest marks against Markstrom is that he just kind of collapses in the moments when you need him most. So I'm hoping, this will be the year he kind of bucks that trend. As for their backup goaltender, Danielle Vadar, I mean, I think Vadar, 24, pretty young, but I think he is what he is. I don't think there's much more upside from him, just personally. I watched him in Providence a lot. He's a big body. A lot of his saves are just made because he's big. I think his mobility's not that great. He definitely benefits from being 6'5". I mean, I think technically there should be, he'll be a guy that's just a backup. Solid as your backup goalie, but if he's starting for you, you're in trouble. What do you think of their goaltending situation?
I mean, you pretty much covered it all. I think that, Markstrom definitely shut the bed in the playoffs. But he has something to build on when you look back at last season. He had a tremendous season last season, and I think that if he builds on that, it's only going to get better. A lot of people, a lot of players have proven that sometimes you need to get smacked in the face before you take that next step. And maybe that was last season. Maybe it was like, okay, yeah, you did good all season, but you got smacked in the face in the playoffs. Maybe this year he comes in and he'll have a better season overall, right? How you call it? He'll have a good season, and then making the playoffs, I think for this team is going to be good. Especially, I know we talked about the defense, but Milosh is just a replacement at this point. You look at someone coming off maybe in like October, December in Christopher Tanev, who has a shoulder injury that says
5 months.
They said about 5 months exactly. So maybe he comes back right at the opportune time. Maybe they make a deeper run. Maybe it's better for them overall. And if they can make some good things happen on the front end, maybe the back end will shine even more as far as the goalies. Because I think that Markstrom definitely has a lot of good things to build on. I mean, both goalies had great years last year for their positions, starter and backup. And I think that I wouldn't be too worried about their goaltending because it's really going to fall on their defense.
Yeah, I think that when it kind of comes down to Tanev is one of those guys that just can never stay healthy.
Yeah.
It's just always something, and it's unfortunate because he's a really good defenseman. I mean, if you put Tanev in this healthy on that bottom pairing, you are looking at a lockdown defenseman. Or even if you put Tanev where Zadorov is on this depth chart, and then put Zadorov down on the bottom too, like you're looking at a phenomenal decor either way.
Yeah, Tanev has just been plagued with injuries all over the place, right? He's had lower body injuries, upper body
injuries. Like I swear to God, like it's so unfortunate because he's such a good player.
I mean, if you click on that little plus next to his name, it'll show you the history of his injuries.
I mean, oh my God, look at these.
Exactly.
Like look at shoulder, undisclosed, COVID,
and it's been
this man can't stay healthy.
And look at this. And it's been consistent. It's every year. So, that's why, like, when we did our analysis, we didn't really include him in there. But, hey, there's always that dark horse or that wild horse, however you want to call it. He's that wild card, right? That wild horse that can come in, and if he stays healthy because he's had a 5-month layoff, whatnot, comes in healthy and helps solidify that defense even more. Now you're looking at a team that, kind of reminds you a little bit of what Colorado did, right? Where they built their team defensively. They had some offensive power, but defensively, it held the line until the offense got to where it needed to get to, and then boom, they pushed through the barrier. Calgary is almost in that same scenario where they're solidifying their defense and offense. So it's a good thing, and I think they're going to be definitely a scary team throughout the regular season. Now, the playoffs is where we really want to see, like, any Calgary fan at this point just wants to fast forward through the season and see where we're at in the playoffs, because that's where they're lacking. They're lacking, in the playoffs. They couldn't get a win. I mean, let's
it was rough. It was just rough. I think that like they have a guy that's a quality goaltender that just needs to step it up, and you need a decor here to really kind of take the next step and be better in front of their goalie.
Yep.
I think offensively there might be a tiny bit of a setback, but I think there's still enough offensive production to be lethal.
Yeah.
Now look at the standings. Calgary finished in first, and where do you predict them to land next season, Fajardo?
Considering they had Edmonton right on their heels last season. I expect them to be second, third, lowest. At least second. Their lowest point could be third. I don't see them going any lower than that, in my opinion, based off of the team they currently have. But we'll be able to tell early in the season whether last season was a fluke, right? Which I don't think it was. I think they've built pretty well over the last couple of seasons. But when you lose two big guys, two big superstars technically, sometimes overall your team can take a hit. I think they replaced one of those in getting Hoover though. So it's kind of like, all right, who else can step up to fill in some of the shoe that Tkachuk left when he left? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's going to be one of those situations. I think it'll be interesting, but I definitely think that they have the power to stay in second at least.
I think for me it's going to be between 2 or third. I don't see them sliding out of playoff contention. I think they're too good. Yeah. The reason why I'd probably not say 1 is I think it's going to take a little bit in the beginning of the season for them to fine-tune things. You know what I mean? Like you had Gaudreau there, you had Tkachuk there. You kind of knew what the offense was going to look like. And I think they made some improvements with the defense, adding Uyghur. I think goaltending hopefully can take that next step. I don't think they lost too much offensively. I just think they missed that one piece, but I think it's just going to take some time to gel. So you might have a little bit of stumbling right out the blocks. So I think, 2. They possibly could finish first, depending on how the season goes. But, I mean, with some of the moves Edmonton made, which we'll talk about in the next section, I mean, I'll say 2 or 3 for Calgary. That's where I'm comfortable sitting them. So before we get off Calgary, anything else you have to add?
No. They still have... even though they were the number 1 team in their division last year, I think that they still have something to prove, especially after how their exit to the playoffs went.
Absolutely. I think they got to really prove, and Calgary's got to prove that they can really win it, and Markstrom's got to step forth and really kind of show that he can shine in the biggest moments and not shrink. So let's get into the next team, and let's go with the Edmonton Oilers. This is a team that is fantastic offensively, right? Can we?
Oh yeah.
Can we have any arguments there?
They have listen. They have single-handedly. Well, let's be honest. McDavid has single-handedly posterized. If anybody knows anything, McDavid has posterized almost any and every team throughout the regular season.
Oh, he's such a joy to watch play, man. Like, it is. Like, some of the, I don't think people that don't play, like, they don't realize how good he is, right? Like, oh, well, how McDavid really good is he? And I'm like, it's just like some of the moves and the agility and the quick feet and the hands, like, he is the complete package. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's absolutely exciting to watch. So let's get into the lines. Conor Mcdavid centering, 25 years old, relatively still young, actually. 80 games played, 44 goals, 79 assists for 123 points. You had Zach Hyman, former Toronto Misery. 76 games played, 27 goals, 27 assists for 54 points. Pretty solid. And then you have Evander Kane in 43 games, 22 goals, 17 assists for 39 points, like almost a point per game, just a hair underneath. Second line. You have Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on the left wing, 63 games played, 11 goals, 39 assists, 50 points. And then you have Leon Drysdale, 80 games played, 55 goals last season, 55 assists because he wanted to be a pair, 110 points. And you have Kaler Yamamoto, only 23 years old, 81 games played, 20 goals, 21 assists, 41 points. I mean, out of their top six, like, I think that's a very, very solid top six. I mean, especially when you have two guys on. I mean, sometimes Drysdale and McDavid would play together in certain situations, but I mean, like, when they have them separate, which I think is the best way to do it. I mean, having 200-point guys in separate lines, like, the point production is just insane.
Yeah.
Like those guys make the players around them better. Like, at times I thought it was OP when they had Drysdale and McDavid together, because it just took away from the rest of the team.
Yeah. I mean, you look at those six, right? There's so much firepower there. I think that adding Evander Kane in that mix, right, was a great move by Edmonton. After I saw some of the stuff that happened in the playoffs, and what I mean by that is, we all know Evander Kane has not an ego per se, but he's very vocal, very he's been going through a lot. He's had the off ice trouble
issues,
right? Yeah. And then even on the ice, sometimes he's a little too vocal for his own good. But I like something that happened. I think it was Game 6 of the round that they won. He put up, I think it was like the number 7, because he scored his 7th goal, and it guaranteed them that win that game or whatnot. And immediately, Conor McDavid kind of like went over him and kind of told him, like, no, we don't do that. We haven't, like kind of just set the precedent, like, listen, you're good, I get it, but we need you to just play your game, and I'm going to be here to kind of like help you monitor that, because we're going to be great. It was kind of a moment like that. And, I think that going into that round against the Colorado Avalanche, it may have been too much for them, obviously, because they lost, right? But I think that now you're going to probably have Evander Kane for the entire season, not just a shortened amount of time. The chemistry that's going to be built should be amazing. I mean, Hyman is the addition here, but he's solid on his own right. I mean, he
played really well last year on the Oilers. Like, I think he's one of those guys that, like, he came over from Toronto the year before.
Yep.
Played really well last year with the Oilers, and he adds that grit and that kind of net front presence that I think you need on that type of line.
Yep.
And I absolutely agree with you. Another year of McDavid and Kane, I think Kane could score 40. I mean, Kane's always had the potential and very high upside, but it's always been off-ice issues that have gotten in the way of his production personally.
Yep.
And some of his effort at times would be lacking. But I don't think a guy like Conor McDavid's going to be accepting that. And, you have Drysdale and Nugent-Hopkins have been there for years at this point, but still a really solid player. You have Yamamoto, like, on that line. And, man, listen, offensively, this team looks good. Now, third and fourth lines, Ryan McLeod, Matthias Janmark, Jesse Pulviari, Matthias with 67 games played, 9 goals, 16 assists, 25 points. McLeod, how do you say that? McLeod?
McLeod?
McLeod. I struggle with English. 71 games played, 9 goals, 12 assists, 21 points. And then Puljujarvi, 65 games played, 14 goals, 22 assists for 36. Now, Puljujarvi seems like he wants out. So that will be interesting to monitor if he actually is like adios amigos.
Uh-huh.
But,
I don't think they've re-signed McLeod yet. I think...
No. I think he's still an RFA. He's still an RFA.
Yeah, he's still an RFA, so that's still not solidified. So their bottom six, it's there, but obviously some pieces, like you said, one's out. The other one hasn't re-signed yet. At this point, they're the less concerning part of your team. Because all you need to let's be honest with ourselves here, right? If you're an Edmonton fan, you're gonna know that what I'm about to say is the truth. You don't really care too much about the third or fourth line. They're just letting the first two lines get their rest because they're really not gonna play. The top two lines are gonna take most of the ice time. These guys are pretty much just going to be there just like, both of you guys are tired? All right, throw them in. I don't care. Just throw one of those lines in. And then they'll be in there kind of just like fillers, right? And all they have to do is not get scored on. That's it. That's all you really need them to do is don't get scored on because the other guys are going to do all the scoring. If you guys score, kudos. But outside of that, they really don't care. They're not that important. Now, is that a downfall? That's the big question, right? Because you look at what happened to them in the playoffs. A team like Colorado was able to shut down their top two lines, and because they had no third or fourth line, was that the problem?
I would say some of it is, right? But I do think there's enough offense there on a usual third, fourth line to be okay. Like, I think you probably should get another third line that maybe averages 30 points per season, right?
Yep.
Because it seems like they only have one guy in the bottom six with Puljujarvi that has got over 30 points.
Yep.
Maybe you look for another addition there. But I hate to say it, that's just being like, you have a guy with 123 points, another guy with 110. It's kind of like, you have enough offense, you should be successful. I think Colorado was just that good. What I want to get into now is I think the reason why they lost that series was the defense.
Definitely.
So, Duncan Keith is gone. He retired. And his cap hit is going against the Blackhawks. And, so that's not a problem with the Oilers. When the Oilers got him, they didn't sign him to that contract that the Chicago Blackhawks did, so they don't have to deal with the cap penalty.
Yep. I
believe. So, you have Darnell Nurse, 71 games played, 9 goals, 26 assists, 33 points, plus 18. Cody Ceci, the much maligned Cody Ceci, 78 games played, 5 goals, 23 assists, 28, plus 8. Not bad. Brett Kulak, 74 games played, 5 goals, 16 assists, 21 points.
Hold on. I want you to go back to Ceci. A defenseman that's putting up 28 points with just a plus 8, that is a problem.
Yeah.
I want you to understand that. That's not okay. I have to disagree at that point. It's not okay because putting up just a plus 8 and your plus minus when you're getting 28 points as a defenseman, there's a pretty big problem because there's a lot of goals going against you.
Well, but I think Cody Ceci to me is a bottom pairing guy.
Yep.
That I just think Cody Ceci would be better off than a bottom pairing guy.
100%.
So I think he's kind of put into a situation where he's not in there to succeed. I don't think he'll be in the top pairing. I mean, I hope not. I hope a guy like Evan Bouchard last season, who in 81 games played, 12 goals, 31 assists, 43 points, plus 10, only a plus 10, but I'd hope he takes the next step.
Uh-huh.
And then you have on the third pairing on this is Philip Broberg, 23 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists, plus 3, and minus 8. And then you have Tyson Berry, 73 games played, 7 goals, 34 assists for 41 points. Now, I would put probably Bouchard and Berry above Ceci as a right D on here. Just because how I'm looking at it, I don't agree with this depth chart. Maybe Oiler fans, you can argue with me on that. I think Cody Cece's a bottom pairing guy. I think the only reason Cap Friendly even has him as like the top pairing over Bouchard is because the cap hit. But
I mean, I think the injured Clefbaum is probably the reason why he's moved up. In my opinion, I don't think. But
Clefbaum's a left defenseman, though.
Yeah, but we all know. Listen, you put the defensive player that can shut people down or that can solidify a line, right? And I think that Clefbaum will probably be up there with Nurse just to hold on the front, whether they're both lefties and all this stuff. I mean, there's a bunch of different things that can happen here, but I agree with you. I don't think CC will be on the top defensive pairing.
No.
He shouldn't be. And I think that this kind of all changes. The look that we have right now for their defense will change once Clefbaum gets back. There is no disclosed time for how long his injury is. He also has a shoulder injury. You know, how will it affect his game? He's 29. I'm not saying he's spring chicken, but he's not in the old man pairing yet. You know what I mean? So how will he recover will depend on how this defense shapes up. But I think that if I'm them, I'm keeping my eyes out for something a little bit better. Maybe making a few moves. Maybe look at trading if they don't re-sign McLeod. Maybe trade him and I don't know. You said his name properly. I can't say that with the P-U-L. Jesse. I'm just gonna call him
Puljujärvi.
Puljujärvi. Yes. There you go.
Bro. The first time I win in English.
Maybe trade them off for a more notable defenseman. You know what I mean? And then again, since the third and fourth line are not a priority in Edmonton, it's very clear. Maybe find someone else to bring in, like maybe either give some of these young guys an opportunity in your minor system, or like I said, maybe you trade those two guys for a defenseman and a okay third, fourth line forward, maybe something like that. But I think that they're definitely going to be making moves early in the season, to try to solidify that back six, because that back six, I mean, yeah, you could have all the offensive power, but when you have a team that can shut down your offensive power, you need a back line yourself. And this is not a championship winning back line.
No, so I think defense is just not good enough, quite frankly, and the Colorado exposed that. Getting into the next position where I think there was a massive upgrade. I think you have Jack Campbell coming in from Toronto, much maligned Jack Campbell. 49 games played, 2.64 goals against, 914 save percentage, 31-9 record. Solid win-loss, solid save percentage. He kind of tapered off the end of the season after he got hurt a bit. I think some of the pressure on him to come back early didn't really help him. I think he came back too early. And then you have the backup, Stuart Skinner, 23 years old, younger goalie, 13 games played last season, 2.62 goals against, 913 save percentage, and a 6-6 record. So, solid backup, right? Not atrocious numbers. He's young. We'll see how it goes. You know what, man? To be really blunt, I think Jack Campbell is an upgrade over Mike Smith. Now, it's unfortunate Mike Smith retired and went on, didn't retire, but he went on LTIR, because I actually think Campbell and Smith would have been a really good tandem, because I think Smith just played too much last season.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You shouldn't be making a 40-year-old goalie carry you in the postseason. Yeah. Because Koskinen was that terrible. And Koskinen was so bad, he went back to Europe to make half the money. Not even half the money, probably a quarter of it.
Yeah.
So for me, I like the upgrade here. I think Jack Campbell is a upgrade over Mike Smith, upgrade over Koskinen. 5 per year. Yeah, I mean, that's probably his going rate on the market.
And he can probably stop a shot that comes from halfway the other way. Just saying. Just saying. We all know.
I'm not here. I'm not here for the Mike Smith slander. That man is done. He is retired. Let him enjoy his career. He was in the Arizona, the Phoenix Coyotes organization. He was he ran for years. He was a good goalie who got fucked repeatedly. I like Mike Smith, and this is hard for me, right? Because I'm not saying Mike Smith is like an elite level goalie, but he was a very good goalie.
He was.
But there was moments where it's like, bro, from the red line, you need to make that save. Like, what are you doing?
Listen. We can all have a laugh about it, right? It happened. It's over. Ha ha. Right? But let's face some facts. My man is 40. Probably needs to see an eye doctor, and he just missed one. It's okay, but we will forever remember that shot because he missed one. Literally, it was a floater. Just like, let me just throw it in, and he was like, what's happening? Like, he was just looking around, couldn't see the puck, and before you knew it, it was behind the net. It just
bro.
It's
I think someone greased that puck, bro. It's definitely tapered with baseball where they what I mean?
Okay. Believe that if you want. Listen, my man just missed.
I'm not here for the Mike. We're not here for the Mike Slater. So let's wrap up the Edmonton Oilers. I think.
Hold on, before we wrap them up. Some notable guys to have on the scratch list, right? Like a McKegg. I think that they brought in McKegg as a free agent for the possibility that they don't re-sign McLeod. McKegg is known to be like a grinding third, fourth liner, more of a fourth liner in my opinion. But put in the right situation, he can play fourth line pretty well, third line pretty well, and I think that's going to help them. He also brings some decent pedigree. He's played for the Boston Bruins and the Rangers over the past 3 seasons. And I think that experience is going to help them in the long run as far as like the third and fourth line. I think it'll bring some leadership there, and I think it'll help out the situations that we alluded to before, right? So I think with that, and then again, it's always going to come down to how NHL treats their AHL, whether they mirror each other and so on and so forth, whether you can bring some of these guys to fill in the spots, things like that. But yeah, I just want to allude to that because they have two scratches on their thing. Tyler Benson, and Greg McCraig. Those two guys, not point producers. That's not what they're there for. They're there just to hold down the middle of the ice, or to hold down the third or fourth line. That's what they're there for. So they're characters that will help. Then you have Marcus Nimalainen.
Younger defenseman, 6'6". Like, he could develop into something too.
Right. So you got to see, especially with, again, like we alluded to before, the defense is what's been the shakiest part of their team. Right. So will he play a role in that with him and, Clefbaum being injured or coming back from injury, hopefully, by the beginning of the season? Will they be any parts of that? Will they help the team stand up defensively? That's just going to be one of those things we got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to have to keep an eye on that. And before we kind of get off this, actually, let's go into the breakdown of last season.
Yep.
And see where we think they're going to fall now. So, we just didn't do it again. The Pacific Division. You had Calgary finish first. Edmonton finished second. Hey, where do you think Edmonton's going to finish the season?
Whew. Let's take a look. I think in their division, they have nobody else that's going to compete with them offensively. And they pretty much have a similar defense that they did last season, considering that so far they look like they're more consistent team coming into the next season. I would probably say they're number 1 or 2 in that division. I don't see them really budging from that 1 or 2 spot at all. Again, that's not discrediting all the holes that they have. It's just that in their division, you have a bunch of teams that are currently on rebuild or still trying to find who they are. Right, so it isn't that easy. Right. No. Now, how will they fall as far as like the NHL completely? I mean, that's a whole different thing, right? Because it's if you look at the conference, they were 5th last season, right? Yeah. So in the conference, they were 5th.
No, they were 3rd. third last year in the conference.
No.
Edmonton. Sorry. Yep, you're right. Sorry. You're right.
Yeah. So if you go to the top, right, and just hit the conference button, it'll show you the, right? So you see here, they were 5th in the conference, right? I don't see them getting any lower than Los Angeles, to be honest, and all these other teams, again, all these other teams on rebuild mode or trying to put Band-Aids. I think that the worst they can be is probably 6. With Anaheim doing the things that they did, I think they creep up and kind of sneak into a position a little bit closer. You know what I mean? So I think that's where the biggest thing is. But I still see them staying in 5th place, maybe anywhere from 4 to 6 is where they're going to be conference-wise.
So I think for me, and this is the most important part, because the division is where until you go to the finals is where you're going to be playing a lot of your games. Mm-hmm. I think Edmonton's going to finish first. I think the improvement they made with Jack Campbell, right? I think that's an upgrade over Mike Smith. That's a massive upgrade over Koskinen. I think Stuart Skinner is going to be a solid backup, right? Mm-hmm. Just limit him, but he'll be limited, but enough to give Campbell some time to rest, right? Unless he completely falls off the wagon. You have the offense that's, listen, the Pacific Division, in my opinion, it looks like some of the teams are increasing defensively, but I think the offense from the Oilers is just too dangerous. So I think you're going to see that offensive output. Defense, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I think that if the youth comes along, maybe a few guys that we're not talking about come in prospects and they really shine and do a well job. But I think in this division, I think they'll finish first. Mm-hmm. Where was your ranking in the division? You said about 5th or 6th in the conference.
Between 4 to 6. 4 to 6.
In the division?
No, in the conference. In the division, I think 1 or 2. That's okay. No lower than that.
I was going to say, oof.
Oof. Listen, I'm not crazy, all right? Let's be honest. I don't think there's any other team in the NHL that can put up the amount of points that they do when it comes to the offensive threat. Their offense is just so high-powered. It carries the team as a whole, which is why I think they got unmasked in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they faced Colorado was just so well built. They just faced a team that was better built than them, man.
Yeah,
it's just way better built. Let's get into the next team. We're actually gonna do this way with these breakdowns. We're gonna probably break down the Pacific in all divisions into 2-parter podcasts so we can kind of separate it. So for this, we're going to the final team of the part 1 for the Pacific Division. Let's go into the Los Angeles Kings. This is a team that has relatively quite a bit of upside, wouldn't you have to say?
Yeah.
Let's just get right into it. So for the line breakdown, the first line, you have Anze Kopitar. Very good player still. 34 years old, still producing at a decent clip. 81 games played, 19 goals, 48 assists for 67 points. Then you have Adrian Kempe, 70 games played, 35 goals, 19 assists for 54 points. And then you have Kevin Fila, who they got from Minnesota, correct?
Yes.
He had a good year last year, 82 games, 33 goals, 52 assists for 85 points. So I think that's a pretty good first line. That's more towards the top end of the league for first line talent. You have second line, you have Trevor Moore, 81 games played, 17 goals, 31 assists for 48 points. You have Philip Deneau for 79 games played, 27 goals, 24 assists for 51 points. And you have Victor Arvidsson for 66 games played, 20 goals, 29 assists for 49 points. That's a very good point per game production for a second line. No complaints for their top 6 really for me. What about you?
No. Besides Kopitar's age, you always wonder where a player starts dropping off, right? Obviously, right. Kopitar's been pretty solid. He's continued his good point production throughout the past couple of seasons and whatnot. I think that this year, I expect him to still be the same, right? Especially with the addition of Filia. I think that it'll keep that line sprightly, and he doesn't have to carry the load by himself, right? No. With a player that's 34, he's got 2 young guys on the wing, So he can kind of hang back a little bit, play a little bit higher, maybe in the zone, let those two guys grind it out a little bit more than he does. Whereas before, when he was in his younger years, he was a guy that grinded out a lot. You know, you always saw the big body, always carrying, always going deep. You know, not saying that he's not going to do those things, but it's not necessary for him to be the one that does.
Yeah, not night in, night out.
Exactly.
So, and then, I like Philip Danielle and Victor Arvidsson when he's healthy. He's very solid. Trevor Moore had a decent year. Like, I think, having guys over like 48, 51, 49, so essentially 50-point guys, right?
Yep.
Around that range. So I think that's a very good second line. Your third line, you have Alex Iafallo? I think
it's Iafallo.
Iafallo.
Yep.
79 games played, 17 goals, 20 assists, 37 points. That's very good production for your third line. Then the number 2 overall pick, Quinton Byfield, 19 years old, 6'4", kind of that Kopitar body type. 40 games played, 5 goals, 5 assists for 10 points. Not great, quarter of a point per game. You have Arthur.
19. But he's
19. Exactly. Arthur Kayev, 21 years old, 80 games played, 14 goals, 13 assists for 27 points. Now, I think the big thing here is Byfield needs to take the next step.
Yep.
He needs to be the guy that really kind of starts developing. And I know he's only 19, so I'm not saying next year he's got to be a all-star. But we need to see probably maybe instead of like a quarter of a point per game, maybe half a point a game.
Yeah, I want to see him around the 30 plus point this season coming up.
Yeah, because you just needed him to see that next step. Like around 30 points, I think would be a very good season for him. And then you have your fourth line rounded out with Carl Grundstrom. 54 games played, 9 goals, 6 assists for 15 points. Then you have Blake Lizotte. 70 games played, 10 goals, 14 assists, 24 points. And then you have Brendan Lemieux. 50 games played, 8 goals, 5 assists, 13 points. Very productive fourth line. Anything to say with the forwards to this unit and what you'd want to see from them, or how do you predict them to produce?
I mean, the top 2 lines are going to be the top 2 lines, right? The bottom 2 lines. They're not good being here, right? They definitely need to take a step. You have 2 very young players on that. What Cap Friendly has on their third line with Bayfield and Kyliev. I believe they definitely need to take that step up. I mean, Arthur definitely, did his thing. It looks like he took his step up last season. And, he's almost at 30 points. And they played relatively decent minutes, 12 minutes on average. And I think that this is a make or break line for them. The third line is going to be the make or break. Their top 2 lines are going to perform. They're going to be shut down here or there, or whatever. And the third line is the one that's going to have to carry their more of their offense. And what I mean by that is when you have the top 2 lines being shut down, like against a Colorado, that has a solid defensive core, or even an Anaheim who now has improved their defensive core, you're going to need that third line to really step their game up and be a little bit more productive if you really want to see Los Angeles take any type of steps forward and getting back to the promised land like they used to be when they were winning the cup. So I think that line is going to determine how their season goes.
Agreed.
Whether Bayfield and Kyliev can make that step. Because Kyliev, I mean, considering he's 21, he had almost 30 points last season. If the center can get up to like 30 points and Kyliev can get closer to like 40 to 50 points on the wing, I think that there'll be not a contending team, but a definitely playoff-bound team.
Yeah, I think they'll be playoff team with the up front. So I think they got, if Byfield takes the next step, and that's the big thing, that's going to be important for this franchise. They need that Byfield pick to really be good.
Yep.
He has all the tools to be successful. He just needs to fine-tune them.
Yep.
Let's get into the defense here. You got Michael Anderson, 23 years old, 57 games played, 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points. You have Drew Doughty, who is currently injured. Let me just make sure. Out for the season. So he's not going to be there. That's a big loss. You have Alexander Edler. He's solid for what he is. I've seen Edler play quite a bit. He's 36 years old, a little long in the tooth. 3 goals, 16 assists for 19 points and 41 games played. Matt Roy, 27, 67 games played. 2 goals, 19 assists, 21 points. Not bad for that. Probably like a bottom. I wouldn't say bottom 2, but yeah, he's okay in your top 4. And then you have Sean Walker. He's out for the season as well. Holy crap!
Yeah.
6 game played, 0 goals, 2 assists, 2 points. Then you have Sean Drysdale, 23 years old, 64 games played, 3 goals, 24 assists, 27 points. That's a good point production from your point. Now, compared to some of the other teams we've watched in the Pacific or read about, not as great as defensive production. I mean, Drew Doughty's obviously the closest with almost a point per game, but he couldn't stay healthy. Let me look at the healthy scratches here. You got Tobas Bonfont, 21 years old. He played in 70 games played, and he was a 0.11 points per game. So it's just their defense looks rough. I don't know. I'm trying to look here down the minors if there's somebody that's worth.
Spence came in last season for 24 games. He had a decent point production. It was 2 goals, 6 assists. The key thing was he was even on his plus minus, right? So it isn't too crazy. He can hold his own. He is 21 years old, so you're hoping that this season maybe he takes that step defensively and becomes a little bit more of a presence on the ice.
You got Jacob Marvier, right? 23 years old, 6'2", a little bit bigger of a guy. 19 games played last season. Was that 0 goals or 2 about that? So 0.11 points per game. I think one of these guys, if they can develop, maybe it's something. You know what I mean? But it's hard to predict, honestly, with this group. I don't think besides there's no one super high drafted, right? Yeah. 95th is the highest. Yeah. So I don't think there's any highly touted prospects. Besides that, maybe some guys down here.
Forward wise, they have Jack Hughes. I think that they may introduce him this season just to get a little bit of a taste, maybe a couple of games. I definitely think he'll be in the preseason, band or whatnot, just to kind of see what he does. Obviously, I believe his brother is the one that plays for the Devils.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, the Hughes brothers.
Right. So I believe that you look at him as a possible call up, or at least in that range, because he's one of those guys that you expect a lot from, right? Just based off of what his brother did for the Devils.
They have a 6'8" defenseman. I don't give a crap if you can't skate. Call him up.
Play him.
6'8".
Sparks. That's what you need. Sparks.
Yo, dude. Listen, not to cut you off. That's crazy. 6'8". Yo.
They just drafted him this year. Let's see what they do with him. Again, they are
I like that.
They are in a scenario where these prospects may have to grow quickly, right?
Yeah.
Because you do still have 2 very good offensive threatening lines, and the top 2 lines are the top 6. But your defense is taking a big hit with the loss of 2 key defensemen. And now you have to kind of start looking around. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't start, that you should start a reset or anything like that. But you have some guys that you may want to take a look at and see where they are. Maybe try to see if you get them in the AHL. And again, I've said this in previous shows. It's very important how your NHL team and your AHL team mirror each other, in order to prepare the guys that are in the AHL, especially the young draft picks that you bring on in, especially, if you get them into the AHL and have them start playing games and so on and so forth, to prepare them to possibly make a difference coming in as a fill-in. Maybe they come in as a fill-in and impress or do something crazy and earn a roster spot. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
It's they're kind of the wild card. Them, I do not know where they're gonna go with their defense, but there's a lot of downside right now for them.
Yeah, I think the defense is just so up in the air. I don't know. I don't know. Like some of these guys could be fantastic prospects and really show out in the Ontario Reign, and maybe they step up and do well. But then there also could be some of these guys just aren't ready yet, and do you really want to expose a young player and destroy their confidence too early? So I think that's kind of like a balancing act you have to do. Like, does this guy have the mental makeup yet to really handle failure at the NHL level? Because some guys, I believe, get destroyed by getting called up too early.
Yep.
So that'd be an interesting situation to monitor. I think these are guys I look at LA as a Bruins fan. I'm like, hey, we got Mike Riley. We have other guys. Hey, you want them?
Yeah.
Here, take them for free, please. I think, all jokes aside, it'll be interesting to monitor how they go from here. Now, goaltending. Jonathan Quick, 36 years old, had a pretty good season. 46 games played, a 2.59 goals against, a 9-10 save percentage, 23 and 13 win-loss record. Cal Peterson had a horrific year. He had 37 games played. He was supposed to start, by the way. He was supposed to be the new starter. He was the promised land for these guys. But 37 games played, 2.90 goals against, and 895 save percentage, 20 wins and 14 losses. Peterson was rough. And he's supposed to be the goalie of the future. And Jonathan Quick's not so fast. So if this LA team wants to go anywhere, Cal Peterson has to return to form. He has to return to being a very good goalie because you don't want to be relying on Jonathan Quick night in, night out at this stage in his career. He's 36, but he's a very old 36. Especially with his style of play where it's really reliant on acrobatics and flexibility. You can't demand him to be night in, night out that goalie. Mind you, when he played in the playoffs this past postseason, he was phenomenal. I don't know the statistics right off the top of my head, but I believe it was pretty crazy. Let me look here. Playoffs, yeah, he had... Well, okay, it wasn't as great as I remember, but he had a 904 save percentage, 3.43 goals against in 7 games played. But there were some games in those series I remember he absolutely stole. I think Jonathan Quick has quite a bit of upside. He has a bit of upside coming in as that backup goalie with some veteran experience in the playoffs. But, at this stage in the career, you need a younger goalie like Cal Peterson to really step into that role and take it from him. 9-10 save percentage on a season, that's solid. That's a very, that's an average NHL starter. But, what are your thoughts about their goaltending situation?
They're in need of a backup, something to fall on. Peterson definitely needs to step his game up and get back to form because currently at this point in time, it's not looking good, right? If Quick isn't gonna be the elite superstar that he has been for them, it's not going to be good if Peterson stays where he is right now, right? So yeah. He definitely needs to solidify his position, and then even their the goaltenders in their minor league system, they can't even cut it in the AHL. They're having very difficult seasons down there.
So to kind of go into detail about Peterson, right? 11 games in 18-19, 924 save percentage, 2.60, but obviously smaller sample size, right? LA Kings, 2020, 8 games played, 922 save percentage, 2.64 goals against, small sample size. Then he gets a little bit more of a backup role, right? 36 games played, 911 save percentage, 2.89. That's a solid, that's solid numbers. But then last season he fell off the wagon with an 895 save percentage and 2.89 goals against. If he returns to form and even gets back into those 910s, then you're looking at an average tandem to me in the NHL. But I don't see you here with their goaltending prospects. I don't see anything wild.
No. I looked into those guys, and their numbers in the AHL are hard to swallow. Let alone bring them into the NHL. It just does not look good at all.
Yeah, with the Ontario Reign, this guy had an 89 save percentage in the season. In the playoffs, he did a lot. No, I'm sorry, he had a 903 save percentage in the playoffs. Oh Jesus, 829.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not so good. I mean, there's not like, and he was the highest draft pick out of all of these guys, and sometimes that's not always indicative of how good these guys are. But I mean, just looking at it here in the ECHL, he did okay. Ontario Reign did awful for Ingram. Let's go Henrock. Yeah, there's just, he played for St. Cloud. Hey. In 3 games played right here from coming from St. Cloud, you had a 951.
I need you to calm down.
951.
I need you to calm down.
That's the future.
Negative.
It's the future. No, but like,
we went to St. Cloud. Stop
but all jokes aside, it looks like, he might be a decent backup someday. He's way too young to tell. I don't think you call up a 24. Like, you probably wait a season or two for him.
Yeah.
Plus, he's older too. He's an older goalie playing in the NCAA, so it's like, I don't put his. I hate to say it this way, but like, when I look at a guy that's older, like in his mid-20s in the NCAA, and he dominates, I'm like, like, how is that? Like, you're kind of a man at that point playing against boys, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much stock I can put into that. There's a 6-year age gap against some of those players. But yeah, there's nobody right there in the goaltending that really kind of comes out to me. That's fantastic. I mean, they have Lucas Parik. He looks like maybe he could turn into something. Oh, he played for the Rapid City Rush. Obviously, a legend then. Hey,
Rapid City.
That's an LG joke there. But he struggled last year in Ontario, 881. I mean, yeah, I think these guys are too young though. Like, to be fair to these younger guys, 2021, got to give them time. It's just, usually goalies don't come into their prime until they're 25, 26.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I'm looking at these guys, and, he did decent in where he was in juniors, but getting back to the Los Angeles Kings, I mean, I see them maybe taking a step back this year.
I 100% agree. I think they're going to, I think they might end up taking 2 steps back. As far as, like, their defense and their goalie is concerned or whatnot, I don't really see them doing too much of anything. I see them, if anything, dropping a couple of spots, maybe down to like 5th, maybe in their division, 4th or 5th. I don't see them staying at 3rd. Again, their defense being injured, not too many replacements for them, and then their goalie situation is kind of concerning. If Peterson doesn't get back into
his form.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those situations where you're just going to start seeing them fall, and not being as competitive as you would hope with that top line, the top 2 lines. So it's a bad scenario for them. But obviously you want them to do well. You want all teams to do well, so it can be really competitive for all the teams and really get, like the best out of all the teams and best competition. But yeah, I see them dropping down to like 4th or 5th in their division. As far as the conference goes, I see them falling off. I mean, in the conference they were 6th, right behind Edmonton, but I see them falling down to like 8th. Yeah, I think I see them falling down to like 8th.
So I'll start with, because I think the division's far more important because it kind of direct correlation. But not always wild card.
Well, not for them because these guys are not going to be playing for one of the top 3 spots, right? They're going to be playing for a wild card position, in my opinion, if that.
I see them finishing possibly 9th or 10th.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see 8th. I could see 8th or 7th if the goaltending is like, if Peterson comes back to form, different conversation. Yeah. Right, but it is kind of worrisome on having a below a 900 save percentage, because like, it either goes one or 2 ways. Either he bounces back, or his confidence is so shattered, unless he changes sceneries, he's just not going to be the same guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, guys like that in my head that remind me would be like a guy like Cam Talbot, like in the Oilers, right? Like, he was horrendous for a couple seasons, then he gets traded, fresh start, does well again. Yeah, I mean, in the division, I think there's a far better team. I think Calgary's better, Edmonton's better. I think Vancouver will actually be better than them probably. I don't know about Vegas. I think maybe Anaheim. I could. I don't know. I think around 4 or 5 for me with Los Angeles. I think they're just on that fringe of being like a wild card bubble team.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. I think for me that's like 4 or 5 in the division.
Yep.
All right. So before we go, anything else you have to add?
No, I mean, obviously this is one half of the division. Well, and so far from what we see on the one half of the division that we've covered, you have some obvious upside to like 2 teams, a wild horse in a third, which is Anaheim, and then you look at Los Angeles where you're like, oh man, they have a flat tire or 2, and you don't
for 5,
right? So
even the spare's flat,
right? So it's kind of like, hey, are we is it gonna work? Is it not gonna work? Because I don't believe that they made any real notable changes this season. They made 1 or 2, but again, it was to the forward situation, which okay, cool. Again, the top 2 lines, they got a couple of players, obviously, right? And but the rest of the team, the defense, I mean, what are you really doing?
It's hard to say, and like for me, I'm going back to this roster. I think if Byfield takes a step up, right? If he improves, if Kiliev keeps improving, Iafallo, he does what he does. Like maybe we're looking at a team that I'm not saying Calgary or Edmonton type scoring, but you're seeing a little bit more middle of the pack, a little bit more production. Maybe you could see them get in a wild card spot if Cal Peterson turns it around. I just think that D-core being so gutted, that's going to be difficult to survive. So that's why I'm so down on them as of right now. So I'm going to have to say for the Pacific Division, Part 1, we're going to wrap it up here. So, like I said, this is part 1 of a part 2. We kind of want to break it down, not make a 3-4 hour podcast. We like to go into a little bit more detail. Me and Fajardo like to get into some conversation, kind of talk, break down things. I want to say thank you for watching. If you have watched this long into the video, if you have not subscribed, if you could subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated. Liking and commenting would help as well. And let us know your thoughts down below of what you think of these teams, or if they're your team, are there some prospects maybe that we missed that you could go into detail and turn us on to. So anything else to add before we get out of here, Fajardo?
No, we'd really appreciate any comments, any direction on some of these teams. Obviously, we look at stats, right? We look at players and notability. So sometimes if you're a hometown fan, you might see some stuff that we don't. By all means, please let us know. Hey, take a look at this guy and give us your point of view. Maybe we can bring you on as a guest and you can talk more about it. So just let us know, and we'll follow up with you. By all means.
Absolutely. So for the locker room, I'm Captain Paul. That's Fajardo, and we will see you in the next episode.
Peace.
Peace.